when Medicare was first, they teased me out in Washington by calling it Medicare as opposed to Medicare. You can't get the Minnesota out of the Minnesota. Medicare, Buddy, you would know this best, but originally Medicare covered what, 95% of all the health care costs?
Well, roughly 80%, because it was sort of modeled on the major medical insurance policy at the time, which typically covered 80%.
Well, and over the years, as greater and greater portions of it have been privatized, the amount that's covered has been continually diminished.
To about 60%.
To about 60%. So, and one of the things that, that they talk about, that with regard to single payer, one of the stats that you didn't have there, they estimate that about 30% of the private of the private system, about 30% goes to, as what Buddy described as administrative, insurance company profits, etc. A lot of it is really wasteful. I mean, if you have 50 people in the waiting room, they all got a different policy. I mean, we have millions of different policies, depending on your age, your health, the number of disabilities, all those things factor. Well, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare to administer. I mean, half the doctors in the country now, they want to go to a single payer system because they went into medicine to cure and to heal and help people with their health. And they spend half their time in their practice doing administrative paperwork. So I think Medicare, correct me if I'm wrong, Buddy, isn't administered for like 4 or 5%?
I've even seen
That's what I'd say.
less than that, maybe
Yeah.
more like 3% or so.
Yeah, 3 to 4%. So, there's hundreds of billions, in savings right there that can go into providing the kind of coverage that, this gentleman was talking about. But, Jordan, be sure to get his information, because I want to look into that and see if we can't propose something to try to fix that. So let's take another question here. Yes. Your monthly Medicare did go up.
Yes.
You might want to repeat the question.
Yeah. She said that her Medicare payments went up and was asking the question, why? And I do want to look into it, because we passed a budget and an appropriation resolution that was supposed to prohibit what was expected to be a 20% increase in Medicare premiums, due primarily to the Part B prescription portions of Medicare. So about all I can say, and I want to look into it, we prohibited the 20% increase, but I do, Jordan, if you find out for me after just exactly how much it did increase, so I can look into that and try to figure out what happened there.
Congressman, could it have something to do with the fact that the person was a federal employee?
Well, that could be it, and that's not right either,
No, I'm not.
Take away, I know that you're not saying that, but we'll look into that and try to figure out what
Yeah, in
happened.
her case, she was a federal employee.
Okay. Yeah, well, and this woman pointed out, it could be the supplemental program, and my guess is that's where it is. That's the private insurance sector part of it, by the way. Yeah. Way in the back?
Who decides whether you are entitled to go in a hospital or not? Now, my brother is going to be 89 in 2 weeks. Terrible Parkinson's disease. They thought he had congestive heart failure, something with his kidneys. They were treating him at home for a while. They said he didn't qualify to go into the hospital, so they put him in assisted living, which is not helping him really, because he needs more therapy. They finally brought him by ambulance, put him in the hospital for 2 days, sent him back to the assisted living. They had to bring him again because his kidneys failed. They had to catheterize him. Sent him home with a catheter back to the nursing home. Now today he had to go back to see a neurological person. Now what in the world are they sending this 89-year-old man home with all this, transferring him by car back and forth? And he's got Medicare and he's got a Blue Cross Blue Shield supplement.
Well, you have pointed to one of the real serious problems that has developed in the system, whereby because of, various political influences, okay, they have found ways to reimburse the really high cost medical treatments and not provide reimbursement for the kind of therapy that you're talking about that would be much more beneficial. So there are a number of us, myself included, have introduced legislation to try to reverse and to fix that. Get them, make sure that the kind of treatments that this man needs, he doesn't need a psychiatric evaluation for crying out loud.
No.
He needs some therapy, So, but a lot of that's not reimbursable, so they're not getting it because they
And
can't afford it.
don't you have to stay in the hospital 3 days before you can go into a nursing home? In a nursing home, he probably would get more of the health care he needs
Sure.
than assisted living, but they don't let him in the hospital long enough to do that. And
Well,
something's
they'll-
wrong
the-
somewhere.
The insurance companies, they'll kick them out, 2 minutes before the period he qualifies. And there again, at one level, you can't fault, they're motivated by profit. Nothing wrong with that. I'm a business guy, but that should not drive our health care. Health care is something else. I built a sawmill and a pallet factory. We have to compete with everybody. And that's okay, but that's not health care. That's not health care. We do have some problems, by the way. I don't mind telling you. Some of these big plants around the country that are making pallets, why, if somebody walked in the room and said you're from Immigration and Naturalization Services, why, you see the illegal immigrants pouring out the windows pretty fast. And that's a bit of some form of unfair competition, but that's not what we're here to hear today. But thank you.
A lot of them, they're gonna turn around and let you come in the front door, but right away, within 5 minutes, they're pushing you out the back door.
Oh, yeah.
And to me, that's wrong,
Well, it is.
because if you're there to see a doctor, you get a doctor's appointment there, you're there at 8:30, your appointment's 9 o'clock, you should not be sitting there until 5:30 in the evening.
Yeah, I saw my father sit there for 10 hours waiting for his chemotherapy.
And that was me. I seen my own doctor. And she goes, well, the doctor's bought the hospital, so the doctors can make their own rules.
Yeah.
So I mean,
That's what's happening with the, I wanted to address a couple of things that Buddy did, but I want to emphasize them. One is, I mentioned, I've been in the sawmill, pallet factory business. You wonder how you get to where you are in life. As a kid, we went over to Grandma's farm and cut down some white pines and wrestled them onto a little trailer behind our 47 Chev and took a few loads to get them over to old Johnny Shogren's sawmill. But, we sawed them up. Dad bought a lot on the lake for $200, $2 a month. And we built a home. And I'm thinking, wow, what a country, we still have the home on the lake. Now, they pay $1 million for him now, and we got $500 into ours. But while I was over there, Chogren offered me a job making pallets, on an old wooden jig and bam, bam, nail at a time. So you wonder how you end up with the sawmill and the pallet factory business, you know. And my kids have taken it over today, and they're doing very nicely with it. I'm very proud of them. The point, I want to make with all this is twofold. One, when we started in the sawmill business, you couldn't find anybody that could count to 10 on their hands, They didn't have 10 fingers, Luckily they had 2 hands. Again, for one of a few switches and safety guards and whatnot. I'm real proud of our safety record that we have there. And unlike business, which has its ups and downs, and sometimes you make money and sometimes you lose money, it's interesting to know Social Security, in all of its years, has never once missed a payment. Social Security has never once failed to yield a profit. And Social Security today has, I think, a $2.8 trillion surplus. $2.8 trillion surplus in it. And as the slides pointed out here, we do nothing. It's going to be there at a fairly high level. If we raise that cap, it's all going to be there. And it will all be there for everybody for the next 30 years. I got to tell you, if I hired a consultant to come into my mill today, by the way, we got a nickel a pallet back in the day when I was making them. We still get a nickel a pallet a day. But we got a big machine that can drive all 100 nails at one time. Then we can spit them out now by the semi-load. But if some consultant came in to me and said, that pallet machine A there that's making these good pallets for you, it might not be working 30 years from now, so I think you should replace it. What? I've got another one here that's falling apart. I think maybe I'll replace that. And you're fired, by the way. So, the question, why do these people want to turn it over to Wall Street? I'll tell you why. Wall Street has 10 lobbyists for every member of Congress. They spend millions of dollars in campaigns and elections. And they want to be able to manage that fund. Why? Because they take a fee for managing it. And every time they make an adjustment, they charge a fee for that. Every time they send a memo to the guy in this chair next to him, we could just tell them, and they charge you a fee for that. They make a fortune off that, off being able to manage that fund. And what would happen, to those whose funds they invested in Enron and WorldCom? They say that just in the last economic downturn and the stock market collapse, 10 million people would have lost their Social Security benefit. So we've got something that's working really well here. Working really well. It's got a huge surplus in it. And if the day comes when the government can't honor that, we got a lot of problems bigger than Social Security, And we do have problems out there that we're facing now. With deficits and balance. But one of them is not Social Security. One of them is not Medicare. Those are a couple of machines that are working really darn well. And I don't know where you guys, but boy, I tell you, in my life, in my business, most people will grow up and live where we are. If something's working well, leave it alone. If it needs an occasional grease job or replace a part here and there, fine, we can do that. But not turn it over to Wall Street. In the same way as this drive, to turn Medicare over to insurance companies. Massive lobbyists. Spending tons of money. By the way, in the interest of honesty here, in openness, I must tell you, I was surprised recently to see I got my first contribution from someone who worked on Wall Street. And I thought, wow, where the heck did that come from? It was my nephew.
This presentation was just excellent, the slide presentation. I think our problem is getting the message out. I just think of Al Gore running for president some years ago, and they're scrutinized, everything they say, and yet he kept talking about we need a lockbox because people believe, I think the majority of people believe that the Social Security Trust Fund is a box of IOUs.
Yeah.
You know? And so the hard part for us is how to get the message out. If they didn't, and I mean, you still hear economists on the radio today saying it's busted, the system's broke.
Thank you, Mary. It's just the most incredible big lie that's ever been told. And it's designed to get, we all have kids and grandkids, and they all think it's not gonna be theirs. It's a result of it causing this great loss of confidence in our government, our society, our system, but it's a lie. It's just not true.
Maybe one good way to respond to that is to ask someone, or maybe even better, ask financial advisors. Is it a good investment to buy U.S. Treasury bonds? That's what Social Security does.
Yeah. And people buy them from all over the world. The Hong Kong Investment Authority, the Chinese, the Arabs, you name them. Anybody that wants to have a secure investment, they do what Social Security does. And they just invest them in government guaranteed secure bonds.
So, it's wonderful to see so many people here because it's obvious that we all care about this. And Mary talked about the importance of getting the message out. And we, as individuals, have the opportunity to do that. And also with groups that we're involved with. But I also want to say that, we're here talking about things that matter to us as seniors. But the things that are affecting us affect our children and our grandchildren as well. And, if we think that, I think of experiences that our youngest son had with a medical insurance system. He wasn't on Medicare or Medicaid, although he was, I suppose he could have. The last year was like he was disabled. But we had to fight. In fact, the insurance company would not cover a bone marrow transplant, despite the fact that that was a proven treatment method for children with leukemia. And I've seen our daughter be sent. If I was not there fighting for her, she would have been sent home with horrible shingles pain. And so the things that we're fighting for us are things that matter for all of our children and grandchildren as well. And I think it's really important that we figure out ways that we can get this message out to our neighbors.
Kathy's spot on. I mean, it's just a message we have to get out there.
We got a good question from a good kid from Kiwat.
All right.
Thank you, Tom. Last fall when the budget was passed and the reforms that were included, the Medicare reforms that were included in there were two huge provisions that were eliminated out of Social Security. And I'm talking about the file and suspend and the restricted application. These are two big programs that a lot of married couples were depending on. Now these two provisions are gone forever. I want to know why they were eliminated and why were they buried in the budget and nobody knew about it.
I'm embarrassed to admit I don't know what the answer is and why they're eliminated, but I
That
will
was
look
section
into it.
831.
Huh?
That was section 831.
Section 831.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the problem, with these big budget deals. I've been an advocate since I got there because as you know, I was there and then I was away for 32 years and I came back. And it's kind of like, seeing that niece or nephew that you haven't seen for a few years between, 14 and 18. It's like, wow, you're growing up. We used to have everything come up through regular order, which means everything came up through the committee process, where everything was vetted, everything was discussed, everybody understood, what it was. Everybody had an opportunity to offer whatever idea they had. It could be argued, debated, amended on the floor of the House. So, I come back 32 years later, regular order's gone. the budget deal, since I've been here, one of them was negotiated by Biden and McConnell,